Imagine this. You're at a swanky Wall Street party, sipping overpriced champagne, when someone whispers, "Enron's stock is pure gold." Investors are throwing money at it, like it's the next Apple. But behind the curtain, it's a house of cards held together by hot air and PowerPoint slides. At its peak, Enron was a $70 billion giant, one of the top 10 most valuable companies in America. But those dazzling profits? Mostly fiction. Enron's secret weapon was mark-to-market accounting, a clever trick that let them count imaginary future profits as real money today. For years, no one questioned it, because the stock kept climbing. But when the truth leaked out, investors realized they'd been playing financial Jenga with missing blocks. So how did Enron pull off one of the biggest corporate scams in history? And how did it all come crashing down? Let's dive in. Before Enron became the biggest cautionary tale in financial history, it was Wall Street's golden child. Founded in 1985 from a merger of two energy companies, Enron was supposed to be just another boring utility provider. But, oh no, they had bigger dreams. Ken Lay, the smooth-talking CEO, saw an opportunity: deregulation. See, in the 90s, energy markets were shifting. Governments were loosening the rules, and Enron wanted to own the game. They didn't just trade energy. They created an entire marketplace for it, like a stock exchange, but for power. Want to bet on electricity prices in California 5 years from now? Enron made that possible, and Wall Street loved it. Then came Jeff Skilling, the company's COO and later CEO, who took things to the next level. He wasn't just some suit. He was an aggressive, high-energy strategist with a revolutionary idea. Enron wouldn't just sell energy. It would be an asset-light company that traded energy like a digital product. No power plants? No problem. They were playing 4D chess, while other companies were still moving checkers. And boy, did it work for a while. The stock price went from $20 to $90 in just a few years, making early investors rich. Analysts were calling Enron the Microsoft of energy, and employees, they were buying into the hype, literally. Many put their entire retirement savings into Enron stock, convinced it was a one-way ticket to wealth. But here's the thing about meteoric rises. They only stay up if there's something real holding them there. And as we'll see in the next scene, Enron's empire was built on an accounting trick so sneaky, it made Wall Street blind to reality. Now, let's meet the three masterminds who turned Enron from a promising company into an illusion of wealth. Ken Lay, Jeff Skilling, and Andrew Fastow. Think of them as the three musketeers of corporate deception. Except instead of swords, they wielded spreadsheets and creative accounting. First up, Ken Lay, the charming, well-connected CEO. If Wall Street was high school, Lay was the popular kid who convinced everyone to vote for him as prom king. He had powerful political ties, cozying up to Washington elites while preaching the gospel of deregulation. His talent? Making people believe that Enron was untouchable. Then we have Jeff Skilling, the company's COO turned CEO, and the real architect of Enron's aggressive strategy. Skilling wasn't just ambitious, he was ruthless. He handpicked employees who thought like him, favoring young, ultra-competitive traders over experienced industry veterans. His philosophy? Survival of the fittest. In his world, if you weren't making money right now, you were dead weight. Sounds like the perfect environment for ethical decision-making, right? And finally, Andrew Fastow, the CFO and financial magician behind Enron's brilliantly shady accounting tricks. If Skilling was the brains, Fastow was the guy in the basement cooking the books. He created a network of special-purpose entities, basically shell companies that helped Enron hide its debt and make its earnings look better than they were. He didn't just bend accounting rules, he snapped them in half and laughed while doing it. But it wasn't just the executives. Enron's whole corporate culture was toxic. Employees were ranked on a rank and yank system. If you weren't in the top 20%, you were out. Imagine an office where every single person is constantly trying to outshine, undermine, or backstab the others just to keep their job. It was like the Hunger Games, but with spreadsheets. And guess what? The pressure to deliver record profits every quarter led to, well, some very creative interpretations of reality. But eventually reality has a way of punching back. And when it did, the entire house of cards started wobbling. All right, buckle up, because this is where things get wild. You already know Enron wasn't playing by the rules, but how exactly did they pull off one of the biggest corporate frauds in history? Let's start with mark-to-market accounting, which sounds fancy, but is basically legalized make-believe. Normally, a company reports profits when they actually make money, not Enron. They reported profits the moment they signed a deal, even if the actual money wouldn't come in for years, or, in some cases, ever. Imagine you get a job offer with a 5-year contract, and on your very first day, you tell your bank, "Hey, I'll be making $500,000 over the next 5 years, so just go ahead and put all that money into my account right now." Sounds ridiculous, right? Well, that's essentially what Enron did. They counted profits from deals they hoped would be profitable in the future, even if the money hadn't actually come in yet. That's what Enron did. But on a multi-billion-dollar scale. And if the deals didn't pan out, no worries. That's where CFO Andrew Fastow and his special purpose entities, SPEs, came in. These were basically shell companies designed to buy Enron's bad investments, making them disappear from the balance sheet. It was like sweeping dirt under the rug. Except the rug was actually another company owned by Enron execs. The craziest part? Enron wasn't just cooking the books, they were manipulating entire markets. Take the California energy crisis. Enron traders would deliberately cause blackouts by taking power plants offline, then sell electricity at insane markups. Californians sat in the dark while Enron cashed in. If this sounds like something out of a supervillain playbook, well, you're not far off. And while all this was happening, Enron execs were cashing out their stock options, making millions, while employees and investors were being duped into thinking the company was stronger than ever. But here's the thing about House of Cards schemes. Eventually, someone opens a window, and when that happened, Enron had nowhere left to hide. Every great heist movie has that moment, the point where the scheme starts falling apart, the cops close in, and the mastermind realizes, uh-oh. For Enron, that moment came in mid-2001. It all started with a few pesky journalists and analysts who actually read Enron's financial statements instead of just buying the hype. One analyst famously asked, "Can you explain how Enron makes money?" and got nothing but vague, corporate mumbo-jumbo in response. That was a massive red flag. Then the Wall Street Journal started sniffing around Enron's off-the-books deals. Turns out those special purpose entities, aka financial black holes, weren't as independent as Enron claimed. The company had been shifting its own losses to these shell companies while keeping the fake profits on its books. By October 2001, Enron's CFO Andrew Fastow was exposed for personally making $30 million from these shady deals. Money that definitely wasn't in Enron's bank account. Investors panicked. The stock price nosedived from $90 to $1 in weeks. Imagine putting your life savings into what you thought was a golden ticket, only to watch it turn into monopoly money overnight. But the real knockout punch? A little thing called honesty. In November 2001, Enron was forced to admit that it had overstated profits by almost $600 million. That's not just rounding up, that's straight up fiction. By December, Enron filed for bankruptcy, the largest corporate collapse in US history at the time. Employees lost their jobs, their pensions, and in some cases, everything they had saved. Meanwhile, the top execs? Oh, they cashed out long before the ship sank. And just like that, Wall Street's golden child became the poster boy for corporate fraud. But wait, it gets better. Because when rich and powerful people commit fraud on this scale, you know somebody's going to jail. So, after pulling off one of the biggest financial scams in history, what happens next? Jail time? Wall Street reforms? A very public slap on the wrist? Well, kind of. First up, Andrew Fastow, the financial magician himself. He cut a deal and pleaded guilty to fraud in exchange for cooperating with prosecutors. Translation: he snitched. He got 6 years in prison, not exactly a life sentence, but hey, at least he served time. Then there's Jeff Skilling, the real brains behind Enron's reckless strategy. He fought tooth and nail in court, but was convicted on multiple counts of fraud and insider trading. He got 24 years in prison, which is actually a big deal for a corporate executive. But don't worry, he got out early, after serving just 12 years. Because, rich people. And finally, Ken Lay, the CEO who started it all. He was convicted too, but before he could be sentenced, he mysteriously died of a heart attack in 2006, just months before his sentencing while vacationing in Colorado. Conspiracy theories? Oh, you bet they exist. Some people still think he faked his death and is chilling on a private island somewhere. More on this in the next chapter. But what about everyone else? What about the employees who lost their life savings? The investors who got played? Well, Enron collapsed, taking thousands of jobs and billions of dollars with it. Retirement accounts? Wiped out. And as for Wall Street, they shrugged, adjusted their ties, and kept playing the same game. Oh, but Congress did pass the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, a fancy set of new rules designed to prevent corporate fraud. Spoiler alert, it didn't stop future scandals. Because if there's one thing financial criminals are good at, it's finding loopholes. So, what's the lesson here? That corporate fraud is bad? That rich executives usually get off easier than the rest of us? Sure, but the real takeaway is this. If something looks too good to be true, it probably is. And in the case of Enron, it wasn't just too good to be true. It was straight up fiction. But hey, don't worry. There's no way anything like this could ever happen again. Right? Alright, let's talk about Ken Lay, the mastermind of Enron who somehow managed to avoid the one thing every other fraudster fears, a prison sentence. Not because he proved his innocence, but because he died. Or did he? Let's go over the official story first. On July 5th, 2006, just months before his sentencing, Lay conveniently suffered a massive heart attack while vacationing at his Colorado mansion. No autopsy, quick cremation, case closed. But here's where things get weird. First off, the timing couldn't have been better for him. Lay had just been convicted of multiple felonies and was facing decades in prison. But thanks to a legal loophole, because he died before sentencing, his conviction was wiped from the record. It's like the universe handed him a get-out-of-jail-free card, literally. And because of that, his family got to keep millions. Normally, when convicted criminals owe restitution, their assets get seized. But since Lay technically died an innocent man in the eyes of the law, his estate wasn't required to pay a dime back to Enron's victims. His wife, Linda Lay, even went on national TV insisting they were broke, which would be a lot more convincing if she didn't still own multiple luxury homes. Now, here's where things really get spicy. Some people believe Ken Lay faked his death and disappeared. Think about it. He had connections, money, and every reason to run. No one actually saw his body. The quick cremation meant no autopsy, no chance for further investigation. And let's be real, this man orchestrated one of the biggest frauds in history. You think he couldn't figure out how to vanish? Conspiracy theorists claim he's living under a new identity, sipping piña coladas on some private island, watching documentaries about himself like it's just another Tuesday. Far-fetched? Maybe. But stranger things have happened. Whether he truly died or pulled off one final disappearing act, one thing is clear. Ken Lay escaped the consequences of his actions. His employees lost everything. His investors got wiped out. And yet, somehow, his family walked away with millions while he avoided serving a single day behind bars. Justice? You tell me. So, after one of the biggest corporate frauds in history, after billions vanished, after Ken Lay either died or went full catch me if you can, what did we actually learn? Well, first, Wall Street didn't learn much. Sure, Congress passed the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, which made financial reporting stricter and put CEOs on the hook for their company's numbers. But did that stop corporate fraud? Nope. Just ask Bernie Madoff, the 2008 financial crisis, or more recently, FTX and Sam Bankman-Fried. Different players, same game. But what about everyday people? What can we learn from this mess? Stock prices don't always reflect reality. Investors saw Enron's soaring stock and thought, this company must be doing great. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, they were shifting debt, faking profits, and making it all look legit. Just because a stock is climbing doesn't mean it's built on something real. If it looks too good to be true, it probably is. Enron promised unlimited growth, massive profits, and revolutionary strategies. It was all smoke and mirrors. If a company's success doesn't make sense, it's worth asking some hard questions. Watch out for corporate culture. Enron employees were all in. Many invested their entire retirement savings in company stock because management told them to. Never put all your eggs in one basket, especially if that basket is run by Jeff Skilling. Regulations matter. Enron thrived because of deregulation, meaning fewer rules and less oversight. Their entire business model relied on exploiting loopholes. It's a reminder that sometimes, yes, regulations exist for a reason. So, could another Enron happen? Absolutely. Will it? It already has, just under different names. The only thing that really changes is the branding. But hey, at least now you know the warning signs. The next time someone tells you about a company that can't lose, remember Enron. And maybe, hold on to your wallet. So, there you have it. The rise, the fraud, the collapse, and the questionable disappearance of Ken Lay. Enron wasn't just a scandal. It was a masterclass in financial deception, a wake-up call for Wall Street, and an ongoing reminder that greed has a way of disguising itself as innovation. So, what do you think? Was Ken Lay's death real, or was it the greatest disappearing act of the 21st century? Have we actually learned anything from Enron, or are we doomed to keep making the same mistakes? Drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you liked this breakdown of corporate scandals and financial frauds, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next deep dive into the craziest stories in economic history. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.